I'm George Curtis. Welcome to It's Your Law. Each week it's my privilege to bring you guests that teach all of us about the law, sometimes how it's made, broken, enforced, repaired, and how it isn't working the way it should work. I think the guests we bring to this show are real, down-to-earth people who are practical workmen and women in our justice system. I'm pretty proud of the guests that we have. This is a particularly interesting and vital time for all of us. It's election time. We are a democracy. We have the privilege of choosing the people who work for us as public servants. Two things excite me in life more than anything else at this stage. I love jury trials, and I love elections, and I believe very strongly in both of them. This is a especially enjoyable time here in Winnebago County because we have a vacancy in Circuit Court Branch 1. We're going to elect a circuit judge that is elected for 6 years and really does some awfully important things in our justice system. Judge Teresa Basilier is retiring after an outstanding career, and I'm going to miss her. But we have three very experienced, but with different experiences, candidates running for that responsibility. And I have invited all three to come on this show separately and tell you why they should be the one. And it's a tough race. These are qualified people, and I'm going to stop talking and introduce my guest for today, Eric Heywood.
Thank you for having me, Attorney Curtis.
Well, Attorney Heywood, you've been an attorney for quite a while yourself. How long?
13 years.
And you're a native of the Winnebago County?
That's correct. Grew up here. My family's lived here for several years, several generations, and it's still the perfect place to raise a family. So my wife and I are raising our daughters here too.
Well, wonderful. And you have a couple of daughters, you indicated?
Two daughters, still in elementary school, so they keep us busy with lots of activities and volunteering.
Well, you went to law school the same place I did. In fact, you have some association with Frank Remington, which he was one of my favorite professors.
Yes, University of Wisconsin Law School, proud Badger.
All right. And tell us a little bit about what you focused on when you were in the law school.
My main focus in law school was criminal law. I saw that as area of law that had the biggest impact on the community and something that people would really focus on as far as safety and the type of place where they'd want to raise a family, and represented the intersection of liberty and justice. So as far as my interest in Constitution or jury trial, it really seemed at the forefront of some of the legal issues most important to the community.
Well, if we have time, I'm going to ask you about that aspect of being a circuit judge, because people who are victims of crime, of course, want the perpetrator to be locked up. But when you lock up the perpetrator, the taxpayers are subsidizing him and his family and his dependents, and we have the most expensive penal system in the country. So that's another subject. It's not as easy as it seems right from the surface, does it?
That's the challenge of the balance of liberty and justice.
I guess so. So when you got out of school, what were your first jobs?
I started as a prosecutor working in this area, working with law enforcement and victims for justice. After that, moved on to be a public defender for several years, making sure everyone, regardless of wealth, had the right to counsel and to be treated fairly in court and protected by their constitutional guarantees. And most recently, I've been court commissioner, chosen by the judge to make decisions and preside over several types of cases.
So you've worked both sides of the criminal justice.
Essentially all three sides, prosecution, defense, and judicial.
Well, I think that's very important, because nothing is more controversial, nothing is more emotional, and nothing is more expensive than our criminal justice system. It may be the best in the world, but it's far from perfect, and the taxpayers are paying for it. But you've also done some civil work.
That's That's true. As public defender, I did a number of civil cases. I had a short stint at a public interest firm doing family and other civil cases, and then as commissioner, I preside over a number of civil cases as well, small claims, evictions, and that helps me expand my areas of expertise to be familiar with the civil and family side of law as well.
Well, that's interesting, and it's going to prove very useful if you're elected judge, because while the trend in the law is towards specialization, the circuit court system requires a circuit judge to cover such a variety of cases: condemnation cases, criminal cases, civil cases, divorce cases, just about everything. And that involves almost an impossible job of self-education, or depending on the advocates and their attorneys to educate you with good briefs. It's a difficult challenge, isn't it?
I like that challenge, and it keeps me on my toes to be a lifelong learner and make sure I'm knowledgeable and prepared for all the hearings that come in front of me.
Well, some great preparation is the job you have right now as court commissioner. I think a lot of people don't understand the different roles of a circuit judge, a court commissioner, an appellate judge. You want to take a shot at that?
Yes.
Okay.
As court commissioner, I'm the starting point for a lot of cases, so I serve an intake role. So a number of cases start in front of me, some cases resolve in front of me, some cases I'll have evidentiary hearings or decide immediate liberty issues and safety issues like bond or child placement or mental health commitment, and then make sure the cases are set up right to then be transferred by the judges, who may make some of the bigger decisions in the case and final decisions in the case. Appellate judges look at a case after the final decision to see if there were errors or other legal issues that need correcting, but as a circuit court judge, you make those final decisions in the cases that have the big impact in the community, and that's what draws me to the position.
Well, I always look at the circuit judge as the ironer. Somebody that I admired for many years and heard give a few speeches to because I worked on his campaign was Vice President Heywood Humphrey. And one of his best lines that I will not ever forget is, they say that things will iron themselves out. Well, they only iron themselves out if everybody's ironing. I like that line. And in our justice system here in the state of Wisconsin, the circuit judges are the ironers. They're the ones who have to keep it ironed. We're going to have to take our first break, and we'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I am George Curtis, and my guest was taken with the flip remark I made about the ironers that I stole from Vice President back many, many years ago. But the circuit court system really is a lot of work, and the person in charge of the ironing to solve the problem, end the controversy, put it to rest, let people get on with their lives, the central ironer is the circuit judge. What's your view on that?
And it's hard to fix everything with one iron. I think the more tools that a judge can have, the better. And so in my career, both as a commissioner and then before, has been working on how can we get more tools to a judge to solve those wrinkles or solve those problems. And sometimes it's the traditional methods of sentencing or handling a case, and sometimes it's new methods, whether it's treatment court, a drug court, way to address addiction or mental health, whether it's a diversion program, young nonviolent offenders, how we get them out of the criminal justice system, or whether it's just something different with a case process, family or civil or dispute, if we can get the parties into mediation or another program to help them resolve their differences or save them the cost and uncertainty of litigation. So as a judge, I not only want to iron, I want to look at the other tools I need to fix the wrinkles or fix the problems.
Well, certainly, and we have some problems today that are new to us, and I don't know that anyone has figured out exactly the recipe. for solving them. You mentioned addiction, drugs, treatment. How does the circuit judge have his or her hand in all of those operations?
Part of it can be setting bond. That's obviously the beginning of the case, wondering, is this person going to be sober? Are they going to be safe? Are they going to show up for court? So how do we use new tools to monitor bond, that we can get people home, get them back to their family, get them back to work, while still making sure they're sober, keeping the community safe, and that they're going to show up for court. And on the back end of sentencing, we've unfortunately seen the numbers show that jail isn't the only solution and isn't a complete solution to addiction. We need more steps in case, more tools in place to make sure when someone's released from jail or released back to the community, they have the treatment to address the addiction, that there aren't issues with relapse. We're facing more and more overdose deaths in our community. So I think those extra tools and transitions to help people in addiction with their recovery and sobriety, that it doesn't end up as another horrible statistic of overdose.
I couldn't agree with you more, but how does the circuit judge fit in that recipe?
So bond on the front end or sentencing on the back end, whether it's participation, whether it's sentencing to a treatment court, whether it's a diversion program, whether it is a period of jail or prison incarceration, but addressing addiction isn't something that can be instantly fixed, and looking at the tools or the arc of where do the numbers show give us the best results with the least amount of taxpayer resources to address addiction and get people to sobriety?
Well, I don't know of anything that's more important than that right now. Of course, civil litigation, the end that I've been in during most of my recent career, is fighting over money. Typically, it's an accident or a misfortune, and insurance companies are in the business of collecting money, but they haven't taken the course on handing it out yet, and so you've got to fight for it. Have you had some experience with insurance and accident and trauma and civil damages?
In criminal cases, the restitution portion is a civil hearing, so
Sure
I
it
get
is.
to see both sides of a case where I may have prosecuted or represented someone with criminal law, and then when it gets to restitution, what are the damages, how has the victim suffered, what is the trauma? That hearing then on the amount of money for that or other restitution switches to a civil hearing. So I've had small restitution hearings and I've had six-figure restitution hearings about substantial level of personal injury or business injury based on criminal activity. So that's given me kind of a foot in both sides to have that civil litigation for monetary claim experience.
And not all of your cases are jury cases, and not all of the steps are jury steps. In fact, there are actually fewer and fewer jury trials all the time. Am I correct?
That's true.
Now, in a criminal case, if you have an initial appearance of a defendant and set a bond, you have a prelim, none of those involve juries, but they all are in the circuit court.
Right, those are all decisions that I make now as court commissioner, the initial appearance, the bond, the preliminary hearing, and then it would go in front of a judge. If there's motion issues, legal questions in the case, and then if there's a resolution in the case, it would go to plea and sentencing, or if there's still a disagreement, it would go to trial or jury trial and let our community come in and decide how does our community connect the Constitution and the courts. And jury trial is their way through democracy, they can do that.
And then there are some cases that would not normally be a jury trial. For example, family court. How does that work?
Family court starts in front of family court commissioner. I have some experience covering those roles, handling marriage in between with child support or placement, or at the end of it with divorce. A lot of times if the parties are able to agree or have smaller disputes, it would stay in front of family court commissioner or go in front of the judge for large issues or trial. That would be the judge then being the finder of fact and making the decisions in the case, not a jury, to give the parties full opportunity to present their evidence.
And then there is a judgment, but with the passage of time, somebody loses a job, loses a limb, loses some income, or makes a mistake, gets in trouble with the law, gets locked up, then these litigants revisit the circuit judge again for some kind of a modification to adjust to the new circumstances. Explain that.
So the law's changing and the facts change as well, so it's important in any decision that I make that I'm applying the current law to the individual facts. So part of that is the knowledge and preparation to stay up to date where the law is, to say what standards are there, if it's enough of a change to justify modification of a support order, is there enough of a difference to change placement, either the number of days or type of placement, to allow the parties to open the door to come back in and then make the request. What's changed and what is the just result based on the current law and the new individual facts, should that previous order be modified?
You have just described an impossible job. I mean, to be all things to all people in all circumstances, and we all have different weaknesses, different strengths, and different talents, and different commodities of patience. And we're going to take our second break. And when we get back, my first question is going to be to ask you what you think are the most important requirements to be the kind of a circuit judge that you admire from your experience on the other side of the bench. We'll be right back. Welcome back to It's Your Law. I'm George Curtis. Attorney Eric Heywood is my guest. He's a candidate for Circuit Judge, Branch 1, one of 3 candidates. The election is coming up shortly. There's a preliminary election in this month, and then the next month we'll have the 2 finalists square off. We agree that the circuit judge is the most important part of successful litigation, of solving controversies between parties, whether it's a family matter, a divorce matter, a criminal matter, a civil matter. The circuit judge is the ironer that makes the process work or not work. You've spent a lot of time in court, a lot more than most people in your age group. And what do you look for in an outstanding circuit judge and that you'd like to emulate, the kind you'd like to be?
The courtroom experience is that everything happens alive and there's a lot of unexpected things. So I think part of the iron is you have to heat the iron up. So how is the judge prepared? How are they knowledgeable? How are they researching what they need to know about the law even before the hearing starts, so they're ready for the facts that come in? The next part that I admire in a judge is when they're calm and patient, that they recognize for each litigant there, that case is extremely important to them and likely stressful as well. That judges are calm, fair, treat everyone with dignity and respect, let them develop the facts, let them present their case to the judge for consideration. And then the third part that I admire is how the judge reaches their decision. If it's legal, fair, consistent, based on the law, based on logic and impartial decision, that I can tell the judge has prepared, knows the law, has listened to the parties, listened to the facts, and makes a legal, fair, and consistent decision based on the law and facts.
Well, I think that is an outstanding, accurate, and efficient answer. I thought it was going to take you 3 times as much time. You did very well. I think that part of it, and it isn't that you didn't say it, but I want to emphasize it, somebody's going to lose in every bit of litigation. It is important that they know they are being heard, listened to, respected. They may not have the education to speak eloquently. They may be from another area of the world where there's a real hurdle. They may be poor. They may have made mistakes. May have been lots of things. But there'd be a lot less violence in this world if people knew they were respected and listened to. And I sense from the kind of work you've done as public defender, criminal defense, prosecution, court commissioner. You're a good listener.
I think it is important for judges to be patient, and they have to make decisions, but that decision has to come from listening. And so in my different roles, or my view of equal access to justice, or that the rule of law means no one is above the requirements of the law, no one's below the protections of the law. I've represented or been in court with people from a number of different backgrounds, and my commitment to equal access to justice, or equal justice, is that people will feel heard and feel like they were respected in court, that if they lose, they can understand the logical process I took to that decision, and they still feel like they were heard, respected, and I treated them patiently to allow them to present their case.
I'm going to ask you how you feel about the jury system, and I'll admit I have a bias. I think that over a period of time, individuals, including judges, kind of get to be biased. They've heard enough of this particular kind of litigant come up with a similar story time after time after time. What I love about the jury system is that you take 12 strangers who have never seen each other or talked to each other previously, and you put them in a room like the one we're in to go through the evidence and make a judgment of the credibility of the witnesses. I believe it's impossible to corrupt them. I believe that most of the time their composite wisdom is really impressive. I believe that that is probably the most important pedestal for our democracy. I'm biased. I want you to tell me I'm wrong, and I want you to tell me I've wasted my life putting my clients in front of a jury.
I can't tell you that you're wrong, because I agree with you. In my personal practice representing individuals and my experience training, you haven't wasted your career because you've defended the Constitution and defended democracy with whichever different roles. That trial and trial by jury is an essential part of our democracy. When we have a criminal case that says state of Wisconsin versus this people, it's not just people stuck in the courtroom all day making the decision. We call in our community to represent the people. So for those disputes, that Constitution jury trial really forms the constitutional connection between the community and court to make sure the decisions made are by the people and they're centered on the views of the people too. So I think you've supported democracy. That's something that I've been passionate, not only having over 20 jury trials in my career, but training other attorneys about jury trial. First being selected to train several attorneys in Wisconsin about jury trials, the methods of jury trials, but being selected twice by the U.S. Department of Justice to train internationally about jury trials, to developing democracy, that it's so fundamental to a democracy of jury trial that I've committed my time to training others, and U.S. Department of Justice has recognized when you're establishing a democracy, a jury trial is one of the first cornerstones for that.
I wish I had written that speech. I feel that the two cornerstones of democracy are the jury box and the ballot box. And I think that young attorneys like you who fight for those two cornerstones are really the salvation of this country and our democracy. We're out of time. This has gone very fast. As you know, I don't tell anybody who to vote for, but I give them every opportunity to give reasons why they should be the one that gets the vote. And I think that you've handled this very well, and I wish you well, and I'll read the papers and see how the rest of the public feels. Good luck.
Thank you, Attorney Curtis.
We'll be right back. We are privileged to have three such experienced candidates who are vying for the job of being your employee, your judge, Circuit Court, Branch 1. Take it seriously. And my message to them, whoever wins, you take it seriously too. The word servant describes your role as an employee of all of the citizens of Winnebago County. Servant is a lot of responsibility. Earn it. I'm George Curtis, and that's my opinion.